Okay, welcome back. We're live. This is the SOEST hour, except it's the geography hour, may I say. And we're talking about mapping Hawaii's water resources today with Abby Frazier, who's a PhD student at the Department of Geography. And we have lots of questions. We're going to find out what she's doing there. But it's within the purview of the SOEST hour because somehow it's related to SOEST, I guess. It could just as easily happen in SOEST. You know, these schools are all related in one way. Sitar is involved. We'll cover that too. So the SOEST stands for the School of Ocean and Earth Science and Technology here at UH Manoa. So welcome to the show, Abby.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. So I want to talk about first the Department of Geography. Can you give us an idea of where it is and what it does and what are the dimensions?
So geography is a very unique department. We are at UH Manoa. We're next to the Scheidler College of Business. Geography is actually located in the College of Social Sciences. And our department's interesting because half of us are social scientists and we study more human geography problems. We have political geographers and cultural geographers studying all sorts of different things using spatial tools. Mm-hmm. And then the other half of the department are physical geographers. So we're doing earth science, which is why we fit under SOEST. So we have hydrologists and climatologists and biogeographers studying all sorts of different things. And then we also have the technology side, which is doing mapping and remote sensing and GIS. So
wow, this reminds me of computer science at UH. Yes, there is a computer science department, true fact. But there are computer science people all over the campus who are doing sophisticated things. I mean, it's not small stuff. And so you really wonder, how that works. When I ask about that, they say, no, we always go to Mecca when we need heavy lifting. We go to the computer science department. But the same question arises, don't you think, with the Department of Geography? Because, all the things that you identified that you would, analyze and slice and dice on a geographic basis, they're all in some other department. And those other departments have to have also, kind of a spatial perception of where they are and what they're doing. So is that redundant?
It's not. And geography has faced this problem all across the country. In some schools, geography is the first department that gets downsized and chopped up and the professors are sent to other departments. But we take a unique perspective on how we come at problems, and we're very interdisciplinary because we share a department with social and physical geographers that we can look at things from a spatial perspective that other people don't necessarily use.
Oh, I think that's really important. It's your orientation. It may be the same information. It may be similar, but you're looking at it through a certain prism and you see it differently. And that makes a difference, yeah?
That's what brought me into geography, was just this unique perspective and being able to look at the world spatially. And it's, it's so wide open, and, you can consider lots of different things when you look at a problem.
So when was the aha moment that you decided you wanted to be in geography?
I actually started out in undergrad as a math major and with a little bit of economics, and realized that my favorite part of economics was the class I took on urban and regional economics and how it had this spatial component to it. So I started looking into geography classes, and I took a GIS course and a weather and climate course, and I was hooked. Wow. And so for my graduate career, I found a way to merge the two. So I do a lot of geospatial analysis and climatology.
What hooked you? What was it about this subject that got you?
With the weather and climate, I loved being able to explain why things were happening out in the world, to be able to understand, why we get clouds that look the way we do, why we see the spatial patterns that we do. It was so interesting.
Well, that's the same thing that happens to the SOEST people in general. Yeah. They see themselves in a universe and they want to understand the universe better. They want to reach out and touch it somehow. That sounds like your experience.
Absolutely, yeah. And a lot of the stuff that we do could be in the meteorology department in terms of the climate work that we do. So
meteorology. So now that's the other part. You're into geography, but you're also into climatology. Mm-hmm. And indeed, that will be the subject of your PhD
Yes.
soon enough.
Yes.
How did you get into climatology? I guess maybe you answered that already.
Well, from the geography department, we don't offer numerical modeling or classes like that. It's not as physics based as they are in meteorology, but it's more looking at long-term trends in climate, and that's what's really interesting to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you've taken courses. You've touched SOEST for courses. What meteorology courses?
Yes, mostly meteorology, and I've taken courses in lots of other departments as well.
Name some.
Tropical plant and soil science, I've taken some classes over there, and in the natural resources department, some ecology courses, and lots of geography, GIS related remote sensing courses, things like that.
So, see, you're an environmentalist. You're a geographic environmentalist, is what you are.
Yes, yes.
Now you know that the dean of the Department of Geography, sits at this chair here once a week. You know that. That's Hung Jung.
Exactly. Yes.
She's one of our favorite hosts here on ThinkTech.
Yeah, she's hosted some of my colleagues on the show.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, it's one big happy family, and I wanted to ask you, exactly what you're working on now, and what we're here for in terms of the title of the show, which is mapping mapping Hawaii's water resources. What is that? Can you define that topic and the thesis, if you will, that you're following scientifically on it?
Well, so why I'm here today, the project that we've just finished is mapping evapotranspiration in Hawaii. And I know most people don't know what evapotranspiration is.
It's like evaporation.
Exactly.
Why don't you just call it evaporation?
It's actually the combination of evaporation, water that's evaporated from the soil surface and from the surface of vegetation, as well as the water that's released through the pores of the plants, of the leaves, when they do photosynthesis. And that part is called transpiration. So when you combine transpiration and evaporation, you get evapotranspiration.
Got it.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So you've studied that, and what is your interest in studying that? What do you think you're going to find? What are you finding?
Well, we've never had a map of evaporation of any kind before for the state of Hawaii, so we really didn't know what to expect with the patterns. And it's extremely difficult to measure. So we only have 4-point measurements of actual evapotranspiration in the state. So this was a very difficult process, and I think most people just thought it was too difficult to take on.
What's the 4 points?
We operate 4 climate towers in the state of Hawaii, and they are very expensive towers with lots of instruments on them, and they can actually measure the flux of water vapor that moves from the surface up to the atmosphere. And it's very expensive to set those up and to monitor them.
Where are the towers?
We have 2 in Hawaii Volcano National Park, and we have 2 in the HCNS sugarcane plantation in Maui. And we've just recently taken those over.
So two in Big Island and 2 in Maui. Nothing here in Oahu or in Kauai?
Nope.
Do you miss out not having it here?
We do the best that we can with other methods. There are other ways to try to estimate evapotranspiration and to model it using other variables, which is what we had to do for this project. So.
Okay. And so did you put these towers in place, or did somebody else?
No, I'm here completely on behalf of my professor, Dr. Tom Giambaluca, and our entire lab. So this was Tom's project from the start, and his idea, also working with Dr. Tomoaki Miura from the Natural Resources Department and Dr. Chi Chen from our department as well.
Okay, you're one cog in the wheel then.
Yeah, small cog, I guess.
Okay, so before we get to the staff and all the cogs in the wheel, what does it take to set up a tower like this? I mean, you mentioned, for example, on the Big Island that it's in the Volcanoes National Park, so you'd have to talk to the United States Park Service to do that.
Yes. So
And, I mean, to me, this is part of a scientist's job, isn't it? You have to go out and pick up the phone and go and see somebody and convince them that this is for the benefit of humankind.
Absolutely, yeah. So there's the permitting side, and then there's the fieldwork side. So one of our sites is pretty easy to access, but we still, from what I understand, needed a helicopter to help erect the tower because it sticks up above the canopy, so above all the treetops. And then the other tower, I think, takes about an hour and a half to hike out to on foot.
Yeah.
And it's these two towers are very interesting. One is set up in a completely native, intact ohia forest, and the other is in a completely invaded strawberry guava forest. So the main goal of that project, this is completely separate, but was to look at the differences between a native and invasive forest to try to see the effects of strawberry guava.
And they are different.
They are different.
Oh, I want to talk to you about that. Okay, and now how about the ones on Maui now?
The ones on Maui we've just acquired, and they are in, like I said, the sugarcane plantation. And so we're just trying to figure out a way to maintain these and keep these up, because when they harvest the sugarcane, I think we have to take them down and then put them back up.
You've got dust in the air and all this, wreck your equipment.
Yeah, they don't have to be as tall, though, because the sugarcane's not as tall as trees. So.
But the interesting comparison is that where the first two involve invasive versus non-invasive forest, this one is agriculture. You know, that's
and
different.
Irrigated.
Irrigated, all different. So you can make some interesting conclusions by comparing the three. Ooh.
Yep, exactly.
Now, what kind of instruments? You said, oh, expensive. Ooh, what?
Yes,
What is
so they all have pretty standard climatological instruments on them. So, you know, a rain gauge and temperature readings and net radiation and solar radiation. So we usually put 4 component sensors. So they're measuring the solar radiation coming down and the solar radiation that gets reflected up, as well as long wave radiation coming down and long wave radiation emitted from the surface. So those are pretty standard in wind speed. And then the expensive part is an eddy covariance.
How do you spell that?
Eddy, E-D-D-Y.
Yeah.
So for like turbulent eddies in the atmosphere. So that's what it's measuring.
Yeah.
It has a sonic anemometer, so it can measure wind speed in 3 dimensions, and it has an infrared gas analyzer, which is these two are the really expensive parts, and that measures water vapor and CO2. So we're actually measuring carbon dioxide flux at these 2 stations, and it measures it 10 times a second. And so it's a lot of data, and my colleague Ryan Mudd is another PhD student. He's the one working with these towers.
They're all identical instruments.
Yes.
Okay. You know, last week, a week Friday, we took a walk around something called Seymour. You must know about Seymour. You know, it's where the old medical school was.
Yes.
And Dave Carl, you must know about him. He's a member of the National Academy of Sciences.
Oh, okay.
And he runs Seymour, and he runs something called Scope. All this is within the purview of SOWEST.
Okay.
And he showed us all these instruments. You know, I'm beginning to develop a sense of curiosity about instruments. Like, first, how much do they cost? What do they do? But then I have other questions that come to mind, and that is, who designs these things? I mean, why? You know, is it that you, as a scientist, one day say, you know, we need to know more about eddies, so I'm going to develop a super eddy machine, and I'm going to try to talk people into having it on their towers elsewhere in the world, and I'm going to make a lot of money because I'm going to patent my measurement devices and all that. And how do these things get designed? Where do they come from?
I think it's a mixture. That's where science and engineering really come together. So I think, you know, if you have the background in both and you're able to develop your own sensors, then I think they get together with the big companies that mass produce these sensors that we use, and that's where a lot of it comes from. Some of the smaller devices that you can make yourself, I know other people in my lab have definitely made their own sensors for measuring sap flow in trees. You have to solder together little wires and make your own little probes to stick in the trees, and it's cheaper than buying them. So.
Well, you know, it's economies of scale. What I mean is, it's that rule: the more you make, the less expensive the last one was. And indeed, and sitting in that chair a few weeks ago, we had a guy named Prakash out of California. We interviewed him. He made, for the third world, for the developing world, a paper microscope.
Wow.
A paper microscope, which I think it costs per copy, 50 cents.
Wow.
And this is actually a real microscope. And you take it out and you look at microbes in the third world, and you see what diseases people have with this 50-cent diagnostic tool. You know, say to yourself, that's pretty smart stuff. And he's a scientist, but I mean, he had to have the creativity to do that.
Yeah.
Strikes me that if you're working on, say, water resources and evaporation and precipitation and all that, and you realize that, you know, that they're charging $50,000 for an eddy machine or whatever it is, You might want to make one in a paper also.
I think if the scientists knew how,
They would.
they would. Right now, this is the top of the line. This is the only way we can really measure evapotranspiration and these fluxes of the gases going back to the atmosphere. So,
Exciting.
yeah.
So at UH, when you decide you want a Super Eddy machine, how do you get one? You just pick up the phone, or you go on the net, you know, and you order it with your credit card? How do you get it?
Either one, yeah. The catalog. No, my professor and other people in my lab have a really good rapport with the companies we buy these instruments from, and whenever we go to conferences, they usually have tables set up so we can actually talk to the representatives and try out some of the new, toys they have.
It's a business.
Yeah,
It's a
it
real
is.
business.
It is.
Can you think of one of the names of these companies so people can look them up on the web?
Oh, Campbell Scientific, I know.
Campbell Scientific.
Campbell Scientific. I know they do a lot of our instruments, but yeah.
So if you want to take a look at some of these scientific instruments and see the prices.
Oh, yeah.
woohoo.
Infrared gas analyzer.
Yeah,
We'll
tell
take
them
that
you're
one.
an educational institution with an EDU extension, and maybe you'll get a break. Maybe not.
I don't know.
Tell them Abby Frazier sent you. Abby Frazier is here with me today. She's a PhD student studying in the Department of Geography. We're here on the SOEST hour because everything is like within SOEST. SOEST is the great umbrella, and today we're talking about mapping Hawaii's water resources. We'll be right back after this break.
Hello, I'm Martin Despang, and I'm the host together with the one and only Ali Yamashita, and our show is called Urban Transcendence. And Urban Transcendence is about identifying where it's a unique situation of a vibrant city in one of the most beautiful natural environments. So how these two can coincide, sometimes conflict, how they could find reciprocity in the 21st century is what we're excited about. And we're planning on bringing in a diverse body of guests, both from the arts and the science and the established and the wise and the emerging generation. So hope you will join us. We'll always be on Thursdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Thank you.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here with Abby Frazier, PhD student in the Department of Geography. And I guess she's focused on climatology. We'll talk about that some more. Here on the SOEST Hour, the School of Ocean, Earth Science and Technology, talking about mapping Hawaii's water resources. And let me say that I read an article in the paper within the last day or so about how there are, this is not in this country, but elsewhere, it is in this country, where where certain people have control of water resources and they sell, in fact, they auction these water resources to other people who need water. You can see it coming. You can see water scarcity coming around the planet. So whether you've thought about that or not, I think you probably have thought about that.
A little, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're right in the middle of something, actually.
Absolutely. And the key to, this upcoming water scarcity issue we're going to face, which I think is probably one of the biggest global problems we'll see in the next century, we need to understand our water resources first, and a big part of this is the work that we do in our department, trying to understand, what our the status of our current water resources are, and how these are possibly going to change into the future.
Yeah, well, it's great to have SOEST and the department, and all of the departments really in UH studying the environment this way, because we are achieving great notoriety. I think, from my discussions with not only the people in and around SOEST, but other scientists, I'm convinced that we've got a good thing going here, and scientists around the world are taking note of us. So keep up the good work.
Thanks.
Anyway, so I wanted to ask you about the staff, the people you work for and the people who work around you. Who are they?
Well, as I said previously, this whole project is my advisor's Tom Jambaluka. So he's a geography professor. He focuses on hydrology and climatology.
What's hydrology?
Hydrology is the study of water.
In all forms.
Yep, exactly. So
Okay.
understanding, runoff processes and groundwater and the interactions with the atmosphere as well. So,
Okay.
and he's been around the department for a long, long time.
Okay, all
And
right.
he's great to work with, and he has so many projects going on. I mentioned the native versus invasive species. He also operates some of those same climate towers in Southeast Asia, and we're doing work in rubber plantations over there, and just so many projects going on. So he's the head of this project, the main PI. Some of the other really important faces of this evaporation project, like I said, Dr. Tomoaki Miura from Natural Resources and Environmental Management, and Chi Chen in the Geography Department. They were co-PIs. And Zhufu Shui was a postdoc on the project, and he did the brunt of the work processing all of the data. We mapped over 40 variables to get our final product here, and he is responsible for almost all of that work. There was also a master's student, Mallory Barnes, who processed all of our cloud data, and that was part of her master's project. And then numerous other people. Ryan Longman is a PhD student in our department, and he has worked on validating all of the model data. So, we're trying to map for the whole state, and, we want to actually check that, the values we're getting are realistic with what we have on the ground. So he did a lot of that work, and then numerous other people were involved. Randy Alice works for a private corporation on the mainland. He helped us get some of our remotely sensed data, and the list goes on.
Okay, stop. I had enough. Now, what do you do in this group?
So I have only been involved in the last year of this project. This project has been going on for 3 years, and me, with the help of an undergraduate student, Erin Businger, have worked on processing all of the data. So we have over 40 variables, and these variables have been mapped at a monthly, hourly timescale. So we've mapped the average diurnal cycle of each month. So the average 1 a.m. January, 2 a.m. January, et cetera. Then 1 a.m. February, 2
All
a.m.
the 40 variables at each time.
Just about, yeah. There are a few, like the solar radiation variables, we can only do during daylight hours, and a few of them it doesn't make sense to do hourly. We just have monthly, but most of them, yes. And it's a lot of data to process for the entire state.
Now, this is recorded at the tower. The recording devices are at the tower, or are you sending that data, back to yourself right away?
Well, so to get these maps for the state, the tower data was just used for validation. Because we only have 4 points in the whole state and only on 2 islands, that's not enough to figure out what is going on for the entire state. So what we had to do is come up with a different way to get the evapotranspiration and then compare with the tower data to see how good a
so
job
this
it
is
did.
really important. So where's the other source? Where are you getting this from?
So there are equations that you can use to calculate evapotranspiration, and they involve many, many other variables. And
Beside the 40.
that's why we have 40, is because we had one equation to get evapotranspiration, and it needed all of these different variables, and some of those variables needed more variables, and so on.
This is what you're doing. You're in the middle of this variable business.
Yes.
And
Data
you're working at a
analysis, processing.
computer making the analysis. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
That's pretty interesting. Okay, so where do you get the original data, the non-tower data?
So for things like temperature, we have a lot of temperature stations around the island, and we can use different methods to try to model for the whole state. And so we've done that for temperature. The most difficult one was getting solar radiation, actually. And this was such a big project in itself, but for us it was sort of like a byproduct to get to the evapotranspiration. But getting, we need solar radiation to get net radiation, which we need to get evapotranspiration. And to get that, we needed to understand cloud frequency in Hawaii. And so this is what Mallory Barnes worked on, was the cloud aspect of it. So we had remote sensing data from 2 different satellites. One of them passes over Hawaii 4 times a day. The other one passes over.
It goes around the world 4 times a day.
Well, it goes around more, but the times it comes around Hawaii.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Whoa. Okay.
Yeah,
all right,
it's going
okay.
around, and by the time it
Got it.
passes over Hawaii 4 times, and then the other one passes over many more times a day, but it's further away, so the spatial resolution is very coarse, so we don't have as much detail. The other one is closer, so we have a lot more detail on the ground. So Zhufu, the amazing postdoc that worked on this, he found a way to merge the two so we could make the best of the high spatial resolution from one and the high temporal
It's a
resolution from the
graphics
other.
question, yeah.
Yeah, I still don't even know how he worked magic to fuse the two together. And then Mallory took that remote sensing data and tried to analyze the cloudiness. So trying to assign a value, whether that the day was cloudy, partly cloudy, or clear, and trying to discern it from ocean areas with like white caps, right? And even when there's snow on Mauna Kea, that was tricky to figure out whether it's cloud or snow. And
Are you identifying these variables? In other words, it's you, Abby. I mean, you say, well, I need to make my analysis. I need all these, these variables. Give me another variable. Bring me one more variable. Can you do that?
no, well, so you have to start from scratch. We started with the cloud data, and then you use that with the terrain to get clear sky radiation with the help of a model, and basically you're using each one of the variables to build another variable.
Okay, suppose I say, I need to know, suppose I'm you, I'm making this up, and I say, I need to know seismic activity. I can't possibly determine, I can't map Hawaii water resources without seismic activity in that area. Well, I'm just making this up.
Okay.
Okay, you decide that. One morning you wake up at your breakfast, you say, I need seismic activity. Can you put that in?
Well, so if it were a variable we needed to get to the end product, we would have to find a way to go and either map it ourselves or find data and find a way to get
Let's
it.
assume you could.
And that's what we did. We went out and found what ground data we could or what models existed and a way to make it work. Because none of these variables existed in a mapped form like this.
Okay, so
we started.
after July 7th, your model would be different. It would include seismic data or whatever.
Well, so where it is, it's done right now. We have all the variables that went into
So you
it.
don't change that?
No.
Because
We
you're
got
working on an experiment. You can't change the variables or the kinds of variables you're using after you start the experiment.
Well, the variables we used are the variables that go into the equation to
And
get
who made the
evapotranspiration.
equation?
It was made in the 1960s by, it's the Penman-Monteith equation.
P-E-N-M-A-N.
Yes, Monteith,
M-O-N-T-E.
T-E-I-T-H.
Okay.
So there are actually multiple equations you can use to get evapotranspiration, and that's one of the most widely accepted ones. So that's what we used, and it requires net radiation and available energy and a roughness length and vegetation height and all of these predefined variables, and we had to find a way to make each and every one of those into a map.
Okay,
And that's
so
what we did.
and we have a map, don't we?
Yes,
Maybe this is a good time to look at the map.
sure.
Okay, the map shall appear. There's the map.
Yay.
So can you tell the people what this is?
Well, so we have made all of these variables available on a website, and you can download the files as map images or as GIS layers if you're GIS savvy and want to make your own maps. But what's showing on the screen right now is our interactive map. So if anyone is familiar with our Rainfall Atlas project, we did the same thing for our rainfall data a few years ago, but we can talk more about that. So what's showing on the screen now is the evapotranspiration for the state of Hawaii. So this is the first map like this we've ever seen.
Is this actually live?
This is live, yep.
So if maybe the control room could click on something.
Sure.
I think the control room is clicking on something.
So yes, he's clicked on a point, and if you hover over the X, the point you click on, it tells you the annual value for your evapotranspiration. It also gives you the land cover type at that particular point, which is interesting. So land cover is part of this. And any point you
But
click
not
on,
seismic activity.
not seismic, yeah. Not as important with, evapotranspiration.
Okay.
And any point you click on, you will also get these graphs that you see on the left side of the screen. And so the graph on top is showing you the evapotranspiration by month. So it has January, February, all the way to December. And then at the bottom, it's showing you by hour. Because like I said, we have 24 hours for each month. So this is annual. And if we change, so he changed the hour to, it looks like 5 a.m. right now. So now the top map is showing you by month what 5 a.m. looks like in different months.
Suppose we go to 8 a.m.
So you go to 8 a.m.
See what happens. Different.
and yep, most of the values are positive. And
So you can make a conclusion out of the difference, can't you?
so
What kind of conclusion would you make out of the difference between 5 and 8 a.m.?
well, so it's 5 a.m. the sun isn't up yet, so you're seeing what's going on, how much water loss there is, and then as you move into the daytime hours, you're seeing almost all positive values.
Let's see 12
everywhere.
noon. Let's see what happens. That's
Pretty,
12
pretty
noon.
even across
Pretty
the
even,
months.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
And then if you were to change the month, it will change the hourly graph. So now we're looking at January evapotranspiration by hour. So as you can see, that's the diurnal cycle. So it's pretty much 0 at night, and then in the middle of the day is when you get your largest
So you're
peak.
covering the whole year on this then.
Yep.
That scale down at the bottom end lets you go
Yes.
to any day of the year.
And as you'll notice, as he's clicking around, the map is changing too. It's not just the graph, but the maps are changing. And we didn't want to just give people evapotranspiration because, like I said, not everyone really knows what evapotranspiration is. So we give you a choice of 18 different variables. So if you click there,
See them.
yes, if you click there, you can view just the transpiration component. You can look at, and they're a little slower to load for these month hour, but the annual loads really quickly. And if you click the hour for all, they load up. And so we also have these other climate variables that people are maybe more used to seeing. So we do have air temperature, and so you'll see that there. So the peaks of Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa are colder. You would expect that. We have cloud frequency. That one's pretty interesting, and we didn't have a good map of that before. So it's showing you cloudy areas. So the reds and the oranges are those are high values, and the blues are low. So up above the trade wind inversion, you have very low cloud frequency. We can also look at what's another. Oh, we did put the rainfall layers on there as well. So in case, so people don't
I want
have
to talk about precipitation.
Right, so people don't have to go back and forth between our two websites.
So before we'll take a break now in a minute, but before we go to that, I just want to make sure I understand. So the machines, the instruments on the towers are recording all of this as against the other data that you have.
They are recording some of these variables.
Okay.
And so, like I said, the tower data we just used to validate these
And
maps.
you do that.
I did not do this. This
Nope.
was Ryan Longman who did most of
Okay, so
this
what
work.
happens is you're getting the data on that map, the one we just looked at, from your regular sources.
Right,
And the
from using that
tower
equation
data,
with all of
with
those.
the equation.
Yes.
The tower data you're using to validate some of the variables that you're getting through your regular sources.
Exactly.
And are you supervising that, or are you involved in that?
I was not involved in that
Okay.
either. I just came in to help make the GIS layers and help get the website up and running.
Well, now
so.
you know a lot about GIS layers, I think.
I do.
That's a nice piece of work. What's the website? I can go look at that and play with that.
The website address is evapotranspiration.geography.hawaii.edu. But we've also made 2 other websites that all have the same exact data on the interactive map, and those are solar.geography.hawaii.edu and climate.geography.hawaii.edu.
Okay, remember that. There'll be a short examination when this is done. That's Abby Frazier. She's a PhD student at the Department of Geography at UH Manoa, which is, I guess, in a good alliance with SOES, the School of Ocean, Earth Science and Technology. We're talking about mapping Hawaii water resources. This is very important. And when we come back, we're going to find out why, okay? We'll be right back. I'm Jay Fidell. That's Sharon Moriwaki of the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. And every Wednesday we have Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. We've been doing it for some time now, and we have some fantastic guests on there, unbelievable guests who give us insight into what is going on in a very complex, sometimes very confusing, sometimes very disappointing area of progress in the state. So we love doing this. We love meeting them. We love talking to them. We love having their ideas out on the table. So maybe, just maybe, we can all make some sense of what's going on. Sharon, what do you think?
I think it's absolutely correct. We enjoy ourselves meeting with all these people and hearing about the energy and the state of clean energy, and hopefully we advance clean energy for the state. So it's terrific. Join us.
Okay,
join
it's
us.
every Wednesday. Okay, Wednesday is Energy Day. Every
Energy
Wednesday, 4 to 5 p.m. Hawaii, the state of clean energy, here on ThinkTech Hawaii.
Energy
we'll see you
Wednesday.
there. Okay, here we are. We're back. We're live. We're with Abby Frazier, PhD student. She's terrific, by the way. This is. I'm going to take one of your classes. Yeah.
Sounds good.
In the School of Ocean, Earth Science, and Technology, talking about, in the Department of Geography, associated with the School of Ocean, Earth Science, and Technology at UH Manoa, talking about mapping Hawaii water resources. Okay, so now you mentioned you let slip before the break that you had two maps going, one for evaporation and the other for precipitation. Okay, well, how does the precipitation one differ from the evaporation one?
Well, so the rainfall map, we finished making these mean rainfall maps in 2011, and we launched a very similar website called the Rainfall Atlas of Hawaii. And if you want to guess the website link, it's rainfall.geography.hawaii.edu.
Say that one more time, we can actually get it.
Sorry, rainfall.geography.hawaii.edu.
Okay, maybe we can take a look at that.
Yes. So the Rainfall Atlas is it's only mean monthly maps. So this project, we did not do the hourly maps like we did with the evapotranspiration, but this was extremely important. The rainfall data before this point had not been updated since 1983, and so that was a project that took 2 years that I was a part of as well, going through all of the rain gauge data we could find in the state and using interpolation and fusing it with vegetation data and model-based data from SOIST, and some radar information and these other PRISM maps from the mainland. So it was a very different product, but still we have spatial coverage for the whole state and mean rainfall maps.
Just to go back for a second, you know, you mentioned that it hadn't been updated, the precipitation data had not been updated since 1983.
The maps.
And, you know, and I hear that kind of thing all the time when I talk to scientists, that, you know, it was done before, and this wonderful man did it, and then he stopped for some reason. Maybe he fell down dead, who knows. Okay, and then we're picking up on that now. I said, but, you know, why is that? Why isn't there somebody that says, oh, we have to keep on measuring the precipitation, we can't stop measuring the, you know, how does that work? Is that project-based? So if the project is over, nobody's measuring anymore?
Well, the rainfall is almost always being measured. So there are a lot of volunteers across the state who are continuing to measure rainfall data. We are really fortunate in Hawaii to have hundreds, even thousands of rain gauges that have operated since the 1800s.
Who put them there?
A lot of them were put in place by the plantations. And so, you know, we peaked, I think in 1968, we had over 1,000 rain gauges operating at the same time in the state of Hawaii, which is incredible for how small a state we are. And then as the plantations began to close, they began discontinuing a lot of the rain gauge stations. So we're down to about 300 still operating in the state. And a lot of that data is available on websites, but there's no good system in place to really take that data and turn it into a spatial map product for people to use. So you need some money to start up a project to do this, and time and people willing to...
No money, no project, no measurement. So, you know, in these, let's just talk about the rain gauges.
Yeah.
There's some in Nu'uanu I know right now. Why were the plantations doing that? Why did they need rainfall information?
Well, so the plantations, anybody in agriculture is very interested in the state of their water resources. So they really want to understand, especially for irrigation purposes, how much rainfall they're getting in certain areas and which places need to be irrigated more. So,
you know, I remember that the plantations, when they were full swing, they had these ditches and irrigation canals all over the place. They didn't have any problem with water. They built infrastructure to deliver water.
Right.
And they, I guess with the rain gauges, they were very sensitive to what was coming down. And there was never any argument about it. They had all the water they needed because they created the infrastructure. Okay, but now we have arguments and lawsuits. We have everybody all contentious about water, especially the neighbor islands where, you know, diversified agriculture or personal agriculture is the rule of the day. If we had those plantations back, if we had those guys, those engineers on those plantations working on those ditches and canals, wouldn't we be able to solve the water problem? I mean, they were very good at it, weren't they? We lost something when we lost the plantations. We lost all that technology and best practices to retain the water and use the water, deliver the water.
I'm not completely familiar with the irrigation system in Hawaii. I know that they were diverting water from windward sides that are wetter to, the center of the islands, the dry, flat areas where most of the plantations were, that don't typically get a lot of water, and so it's.
Yeah. Well, who knows?
I don't know.
maybe there have been meteorological changes, that make it impossible to go back and do that again.
Maybe. From some of the work that I've been doing, just looking back to 1920 at our rain gauge data, it looks like we've been seeing declines in rainfall almost everywhere across the state, and it seems to be getting drier. We still have some more work to do.
Are these little declines or big declines?
They're pretty big declines, especially over the last 30 years. So this is another reason why we want to understand the full hydrologic cycle and where our water's going, and so that we can preserve it and allocate it correctly.
Oh, this is important.
It's very
Okay,
important.
so zooming back now to where we were with the precipitation maps that you have. So you want to put them, you want to overlay them, to use that word, you want to overlay them with the evaporation maps, or at least synergize the information and evaluate them as a combined data set.
Right.
Right? Put that,
Yeah.
So why do you need to do that?
Well, so our friends at the USGS and at the Commission for Water Resource Management, they run water balances and are trying to understand, the state of our water here in Hawaii. And so they need this data for their models. So, the USGS, they operate a lot of stream gauges, and so they're trying to, to finish out their water balance, they need the rainfall inputs, they need the evapotranspiration outputs, and then they need to understand the groundwater flow. So this data is all extremely important for them.
So you can bundle it and give it to them in a way they've never had it before.
Right.
What's interesting is that they might have had rain gauges, a la 100 years ago before, but now they have much more than that.
Right. Well, and there have been maps going, back over the decades, but, the ones we have now, especially for rainfall, we think this is the best, right? This is, to the best of our knowledge, these are the patterns. This is how much there is, and, we're working with the data that we have, and, if there's better data out there, we'll take it and try to use it and improve our maps.
It's a work in progress.
Absolutely.
I mean, while you're doing this, you're improving it, improving the how you get the data, how you can authenticate the data.
Right.
How you analyze the data. Gee whiz, pretty exciting.
Yeah, well, I mean, and we can't put a rain gauge everywhere, so, we have to use our best guess. And my professor in the 80s, he set up a climate network across Haleakala on Maui, and in the first few years they had a rain gauge out there. It got more rain than Mount Waialeale on this spot on the eastern side of Haleakala. And, we just never had a rain gauge there before. We didn't know. It's a remote area. So it's just really important to monitor these things and to keep recording
Stay in
the
touch.
data. Yeah.
Stay in touch with larger pictures. We're going to take one more break here. This is Abby Frazier. She's a PhD student at the Department of Geography. We're talking about mapping Hawaii's water resources. We'll be right back.
I'm Hong Jiang, host for Asia in Review on Tuesdays.
And I'm David Day, host for Asian Review on Thursdays. Both of us broadcast our respective shows at 4 p.m.
And my topics tend to deal with questions related to environment, culture, history, and sometimes human rights.
And my shows tend to be on international business, foreign policy, geopolitics, and national security. And you can watch our shows live on the ThinkTech website at thinktechhawaii.com.
And you can also watch us on YouTube or Olalo.
So come join us on Thursdays at 4 p.m. I'm David Day.
And on Tuesdays at 4 p.m., I'm Hong Jiang.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Okay, we're back. We're live with Abby Frazier, a PhD student at the Department of Geography. She's focusing on climatology. And we're here within the SOEST hour, talking about mapping Hawaii's water resources. And one of the maps we wanted to look at that you mentioned last time, Abby, is the hydrologic map?
Well, so you were asking about how the rainfall ties in with the evapotranspiration, and so sorry, the image is very small. If you go to the homepage on the evapotranspiration website, you can see this a little clearer. But it just kind of shows all of the pathways that water takes through our system. So, it comes in as precipitation. Some will get intercepted by the vegetation. Some will infiltrate through the soil and go down into the groundwater. Others will stay on the surface and be evaporated from there, or can be taken up by the roots and transpired back up to the atmosphere. So it just kind of shows the whole cycle of water through the system.
So if I'm at the what's it called, the Geologic Service,
USGS, yeah.
USGS,
Yes.
and I get this layered information from you about both sources of data, what good does it do me?
Well, so that's when they can run their water balance models and understand stream flow and try to predict, if we have this much rain coming in, then how much can we expect
So
coming
it's a
out?
prediction thing.
It can be, or just understanding the current state of how much is stored below ground, or are our water levels being depleted.
So they're making further analysis on it, and you have access to that?
When they publish it, I will.
They publish it, but it's not like they have an updating map all the time showing their analysis.
Not a map, no, but they're working on their analyses over there. Yeah.
I mean, this just gets to my last and final question, maybe my most important one is, why do we care? And I think I know why they care. They're government, okay, and they're going to make something of it anyway. But why does the public care about this prediction that they would make, or the data that you would get? Why do we care about that? Now, you alluded to the fact that we had less rainfall here in the state, in considerable changes. So if I say, right now there's a drought in California, right? If I say, oh, we have less rainfall, okay, so we have less rainfall. What are you going to do about it? Make a prayer? What are you going to do? Seed the clouds? They used to talk about that in the 50s. What are you going to do when you find out?
Well, so there are, a lot of different reasons why this is important, and, we're putting the data out there for all the interested parties to take and use, and especially, we were funded by the Commission on Water Resource Management and the Army Corps of Engineers, and they're, very interested. This goes into their plans, and, when they're trying to decide about new developments, do they have the water to, can they actually support those new developments? And, for farmers in the agricultural sector.
Building developments.
Exactly.
The construction development.
Yes.
Okay.
So homes, residential areas,
Yeah,
things
that's
like
a good
that.
question.
Exactly. Do we have enough water to commit and say we'll be able to give you drinking water for
So
this many
that's
years?
location specific.
Yeah.
Because I say I want to put this project or this housing project in this area, you can tell me, they can tell me whether it's an area that has sufficient rainfall or water in the water table
Yeah.
to actually
So
function.
we're providing the data for them to make those decisions, and trying to just understand, the patterns and the temporal patterns. Which months are drier, or are you losing more? You have more evaporation. Trying to understand all these patterns.
And you have that. You have that information month
do.
by month,
Yeah.
patterns. So, I mean, is the ultimate thing for you or for Department of Geography or for SOES, as a allied partner on this, to understand climate change? I mean, is that part of this?
That's a question in the back of our minds, but it doesn't have anything to do with this particular project, because we're not looking at change over time with the evaporation data or the solar data in this particular context. So these websites are just trying to give you the mean. We're just trying to give you the average conditions, the
For a
average
location.
the average
So it's location
evapotranspiration.
oriented, as it should be in the
Yep.
Department of Geography.
Yes.
It's all about place.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, and we've found some really interesting patterns with our evapotranspiration output. So we were actually able to see on the map because we use land cover data, we're able to see where invasive species are and how much water they are using. So you can, if you look in the Big Island near Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, the area that's all invaded with strawberry guava shows up as having higher evapotranspiration than some of the outlying areas.
Oh, so you can, oh, wow.
So we think that plants like that might be using more water,
Yeah.
which could be a bad thing too if they start, crowding out our native species, and then they're losing more water to the atmosphere. That's less that's available for the forest to use.
This all seems to assume something, and that is that that we have to watch our resources. You're mapping it not just for intellectual interest. You're mapping it because water is getting more important, and if invasive species use more water, you want to know about that.
We do, yes.
It's because that has a secondary effect of losing water out of our water resources.
Exactly, yeah.
And as we lose water, as we lose precipitation and all that, it's of some concern to us. But what's the action point? I mean, could I draw, this is my final question for now, could I draw some action points out of what you're doing? I mean, at the end of the day, would you go down to the city council and say, you've got to do this? Would you do that?
Well, in terms of the invasive species, I mean, we already know reasons why we want to keep invasive species out, but it's more evidence for trying to remove strawberry guava, for example. So there's a lot out there, and I hope people, can use our websites and get the information they need. And
Tell them why they should continue to follow your story. That camera over there.
that one over there. So please check out our website, evapotranspiration.geography.hawaii.edu, and look at our interactive map. I've already heard from a professor at UH Hilo today about how it just makes all the vegetation data make sense and the patterns that he's seeing, because we have so many variables on there that he's never been able to look at before. So, we have interest in the biological side, from the government side, the hydrology people. People in SOIST, obviously, and it's just, there's some really cool stuff on there. So I encourage you to check it out. You can go click right where you live and see what your evapotranspiration is like.
Click where you live. That's Abby Frazier, and don't you want to be like her? Don't you want to be a scientist working at UH Manoa, doing such interesting things and getting so excited about it? Thank you, Abby Frazier, PhD student at the Department of Geography, all within the SOIST hour, talking about mapping Hawaii's water resources. Thanks so much.
Thank you.